Imagine a six-pack. It's nice and symmetrical, like an ice cube tray. It's pleasantly tan, just the right amount, just the right hue. It has the aroma of raw willpower, and if you were to lick it, it would probably taste of a hint of strawberry protein shake, or maybe banana. I don't know how that makes you feel, but it does very little for me. And I can prove that by my utter lack of physical activity for a long, long time, despite being tantalized by this vision of perfection, this wonderful asset, for also a long, long time. But I am doing more now than I did before. And my friend Chris Stefanick can claim some of the credit for that. He showed me a vision of health that's focused on living a better and longer life, having more fun, having less limitations, of joy in movement and nutrition and self-care. Not because the end result impresses someone, but because it's a path of self-mastery, of learning something new for its own sake and for your own sake. I'm Philip Frey, this is Valiant Growth, and this is a talk with Chris. My aim is to nurture your intrinsic motivation to live a healthier life today, and to show you some of the potential paths you can go down on. In the manner with which you might have gotten accustomed to on this podcast, and then gotten unaccustomed to over the past few months, we're going to focus on the why and on strategy, and also how to do it without a lot of or any financial expense or extra stuff. Here's the truth. This interview has been sitting on my hard drive for about half a year, and more on that in the next episode. But I'm going to pretend anyway and say, hey Chris, welcome to Valiant Growth.
Hi Philip, thanks for having me on. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm really happy to have you. After having been on Choice Conversations, it was time to get a little bit of wisdom out of you as well.
Oh, well, thanks. You're too kind.
The reason why I got you on the show, and I've been thinking a lot about how to express this, and I might not nail it, but I'm going to try. The reason is that I noticed a mentality that you have, a kind of respect and attention, and I would even say love towards your physical health. And when I listen to your podcasts, that really shines through to me. It's often you just mention these little things about your sleep or your physical exercise, and it comes through that you really care about it. And I think the best way that I've found to put it is, you know, the Nathaniel Branden's definition of self-esteem.
Refresh my memory. I know I've heard it several times, but
yeah, I had to. It's in front of me too, because the exact wording is kind of hard to remember. But it's to experience oneself as competent to cope with the basic challenges of life and as worthy of happiness. And what I hear from the things that you put out there is this: if I insert physical health into this, so you experience yourself as competent to cope with the basic challenges of physical health and worthy of physical happiness. So this kind of attitude, I don't know how to put it, body self-esteem maybe, kind of attitude is what I want to talk to you about.
Physical
I'm
happiness.
really curious.
I love it.
Yeah. Really curious. Do you agree with me, first of all? And if so, where does it come from? What's the history behind it? And were there any major shifts, or is this something that you've known for all of your life?
Right. Well, first of all, that's a really interesting way of thinking about it, putting it in the Nathaniel Branden definition of love. And I have to think a little bit about it. It seems like it fits now that you say it, but I want to sit back and ponder that one for a little bit. I definitely have health as one of the highest priorities for me. And it's not something that has always been there. Certainly. I mean, I grew up, I would say, relatively unhealthy. So I was always an overweight child, and grew up in a family where health wasn't really a priority. You know, the way we eat, there's a lot of overweight people in my family, and I look back on some of the habits I had with food, and it was not a very healthy relationship with food. So things like I would sometimes just, I don't know if you've ever had sweetened condensed milk, but like I would just take a can of sweetened condensed milk and eat the whole thing plain without, normally it's something that you don't eat plain. It's normally something you use in cooking, baked goods and the like. But it's just really sweet, and it's pretty delicious, but it's, it's sickening sweet to me now when I try it. But it was one of those things where, as children, food can be a source of comfort. I mean, I shouldn't just say as children, it can be that source of comfort to anyone, but typically that relationship to food, using food as like a drug, that develops in childhood. And if you think about it, it's really the first drug that children have available to them to use in this way. That children often don't have access to alcohol or other harder drugs, but they do have food to go to comfort them. And some of the responses that the body has, the biological responses that the body has to food, like in sugar in particular, can be similar to some of the drugs that are out there, the chemical responses it creates in the brain. And that's why sugar is very much addictive. So I had this really unhealthy relationship with food and was overweight. And to be honest, the idea that I would even diet to lose weight just like was not even in my thoughts. I of course was aware of diets, knew people who dieted, knew who people lost weight on diets. Typically they would go off the diet then and gain it all back. But to me, I wasn't like, oh, well, that's something I even need to contemplate of, changing the way I eat or exercising and all of that. I was just kind of living life on autopilot. And when I first started to change that attitude, I was in college, and at the time I was just motivated by picking up women. And I was like,
That's common approach, I would say.
Right. Yeah. So it was no, higher calling or anything that, said, oh, you know what, I should improve my health for, all these great reasons. Not that, getting, the comfort of a woman is not an important thing to have, not an important need to have met in your life, but, it was pretty much that. And so I started off primarily just exercising more. I didn't spend much time on adjusting what I ate. And that going from someone who just sat around all the time and watched TV and played video games to someone who exercised regularly, I lost probably, I want to say I lost maybe 20 pounds when I did that. And I'm not a big guy. I don't have a big frame. So for me, 20 pounds was a lot. And it was a noticeable difference, and I noticed the difference in picking up women and my confidence, at least, and probably most of the gains in picking up women was just my confidence in myself, having a more attractive physical appearance. But there was that definite difference there. But and fortunately, that was a habit that I was able to stick with, where, I've been, since I started, and I think I was maybe 21 at the time, since I started working out, that was initially was mainly just resistance training, doing the weights and the like. I pretty much have done resistance training, regularly, like, once or twice a week, if not 3 or 4 times a week. Ever since then, it's just, what ends up happening is like each year there might be 2 or 3 weeks a year where I miss getting in any resistance training in any given year, but that's it. It's, I'm now going on, 20 years of doing this where it's been really consistent. I still didn't have like the mindset that I do now. And that really didn't come till I started to awaken myself more, my consciousness, I guess, to things around me instead of just kind of living life on autopilot, just doing what everybody else was doing, living a very mainstream sort of life, doing all the things that in mainstream they say you're supposed to be doing, right? And that's have a good job, buy a house, save for retirement, get a wife and kid and that sort of thing. But, the mainstream, they don't talk a lot about self-knowledge, self-awareness and things of that nature. And, dealing with your, any, internal trauma you may have, those things are very much kind of pushed under the rug in the mainstream, right? And I kind of went through this awakening where I started questioning everything that culture says we, quote unquote, should do this, should do that. And looking more internally, asking a lot of questions of myself, what's important to me? What do I want? What's best for me? Who am I? Those sort of things, and really diving in. And one of the things that it came out that was really important was physical health. And the more I got into it, the more far-reaching I realized the significance of it, because one of the things that people talk about is they talk about it, they call it the mind-body dichotomy. They talk about like the mind as something separate from the physical body. There's physical health and then there's mental health. And it's like there's no relationship between these two. But the more that you look into the science behind it, they are very much linked. So the health of your body affects the health of your brain and your thinking, right? And your experience as you're living life. Just as how you're experiencing and living life, that will also affect the health of your body. So somebody who's more positive, for example, will have, if they have a positive mindset, they will tend to have more healthy outcomes with their body. This is the reason why placebos work. For example, placebos have been proven to increase your odds at, beating various diseases and ailments, right? And it's because the mind has a lot of power over the body, and likewise, the body has a lot of power over the mind. And so the more I dove into it and the more I started exploring all this, the more I started realizing that health was one of the key pillars to being successful in life. And, I mean that success in all areas of your life. So the healthier you are, the more you're going to be successful in things like your day job. You're going to be able to perform at a higher level. You're going to have more energy. You're going to be able to think more clearly, make more intelligent decisions and the like. You're going to have more resources available to you when you're dealing with people, and your relationships are then going to improve. If you think about the responses you might have to somebody if someone, for lack of a better term, say verbally attacks you, right? If you're not feeling well and if you're tired and somebody does that, what are your odds of you coming back with a response that's going to help improve your situation, right? As opposed to just reacting in anger and being defensive or whatever, and something that's not going to improve your situation is probably just going to make it worse. What are those odds versus if you're actually feeling good and you're not tired, you're full of energy, you're rested, you're refreshed? The odds, I think anybody would be able to see that your odds are higher if you're feeling better physically of having a better response in those situations than if you're grumpy or whatever. Not if you're ill. And so, those are just kind of a couple examples but it really factors into all areas of your life. And so when I saw that, it started giving me a lot of pleasure just to improve my health. For one, I was feeling better. I physically was noticing, I could definitely notice these physical changes and I would feel better physically, but then I noticed that, I started having better outcomes in other areas of my life as well. I started just enjoying life better, and that it really was having a ripple effect. And it just kind of built off of each other, those things, as I would have these successes, which would lead to more successes, which would make me want to go back and work on health even more. and have more successes there. And, a big part of this was education. I mean, certainly one of the real keys if you want to improve your health is educating yourself, because what you're taught, if you're just kind of on cruise control through life and just absorbing what you learn about health through just your mainstream interactions, what's on mainstream TV, what you maybe learned in your school, the school that you went to, you're not going to be armed with the knowledge you need to be able to really have a huge impact on your life, and on your health. So that was one key, is just this desire to learn more to the success. So I don't know, that was a really long way of answering that question, but it's definitely been a journey for me, and one that, I'm still on. I'm still looking for tweaks along the way to live life in even more healthy than tomorrow than I am living it today, that sort of thing.
People hear this advice a lot. Like, you kind of, not necessarily perhaps the specific advice that you give, but more just this general slogan of, a healthy mind, fit body, healthy mind, your health is important, etc., etc. I'm pretty sure that everybody hears that many, many times, but something is missing, and they're never launched into action. And I know personally that my interest in this is very recent as well, and I've heard it many times before something really clicked. And my theory on that is that many people are simply not aware of how miserable they are, physically speaking.
Yeah.
So you get used to being tired, and that's the normal.
Sure.
Or you've never not been tired. You get used to sleeping poorly, and that's normal. You get used to, getting pain if you bend to pick up something, and that's the normal. And I think that's one cause, but I wonder what you think might help kind of shock people out of this, or gently guide them out of this, whichever, and to help them see that these are not just empty slogans, but this is really an aspect that's key to joy in life.
Wow. First of all, I would just say that I agree with your statements on people don't realize how bad they're feeling, because it does become a way of life. And, a great example of this is that many, many people have an intolerance to gluten, much more than just, celiacs. People that are diagnosed with celiac disease is a very small percentage of the population. I believe it's less than 1%. But that's on a scale of intolerance to gluten, where when you pass this certain marker, they now call you celiacs. You step on the other side of the marker, you're now not a celiac. But when they look at people that have, where are they at on the scale of intolerance to gluten, almost everybody registers on it somewhere. Just only some of them are at the higher end, where they're classified as celiacs. And people don't realize that because they've not been without a wheat product or a gluten product long enough to see the benefits. Because, maybe you might have a day where you don't have wheat, or 2 days or whatever, but it takes a couple weeks for your body to start healing and respond to that irritant not being there anymore to really see the benefits, right? And that time throughout their whole life, they've never gone a long enough period to go without it. And so people have, there's many foods that cause intolerances that people are having issues with. They don't even realize they have an issue with, because they've never been off of it long enough to realize that they can feel better than what they currently feel. So really, really good point. Now, addressing your issue on how can we get people to start heading in this direction. And, I think if somebody's not looking for an answer to why they're not having the outcomes they want in their life right now, be that physical or otherwise, I don't know what the answer is to get them there, because in my experience, people that aren't actually looking for an answer, seeking it, if you try to present them with a solution, they're going to dismiss you. That's probably your best response, is they just, casually dismiss you. A lot of people will respond with defensiveness and anger and the like, and they get very emotionally triggered. So I'm not really sure what the solution is for somebody who is not actually seeking an answer. I mean, you could try a very empathic approach, somebody that tell them, how much you are distressed seeing them heading in this direction, because you care about them and you want them to be healthy, you want them to be enjoying life and the like, and you want them to be around for many years to come and not be gone much sooner than that because of the steps they're taking, right? I mean, you can express those things to them, and maybe you can get through doing that approach where using a lot of I messages, right, instead of you messages. So saying, I feel this way because I see that you're making choices that are not optimal for your health, right? Rather than saying you're making really bad choices and you're screwing up, basically saying that in one way or another, that you're screwing up. The you messages, your messages are much more likely to trigger somebody to be defensive and for the interaction to go nowhere than starting with I messages and being, expressing that you're concerned and things like that. But even then, I don't know. It's people that aren't, you almost have to have something happen that causes you to say, what, enough is enough. It's like hitting rock bottom. Enough is enough. I've got to change. I can't continue on this path I'm at right now. And when people hit that road, there's a choice, and the choice is, they either do something different or they really step on the accelerator and go the opposite direction. And I guess when people are at that point and they're looking for answers, that's when you can step in and show them things that have worked for you, show them, how you educated yourself. You can, give them some tips and the like, and I guess maybe at that point, the showing what's worked for you and really modeling the behavior is probably the most effective thing. If you say, this worked for me, and when I did X, Y, and Z, that's probably a lot more effective than saying, I've heard that the best way to lose weight, for example, is, to do this kind of diet. And no, I'm not eating that. You're saying that to them while you're stuffing your mouth with ice cream and potato chips, right? It's not going to have nearly as much of an effect as if you're saying it to them while you're, sporting a lean physique and full of energy, and you're eating your vegetables, kind of thing, right? So I think, modeling is important, but yeah, beyond that, I don't know. I mean, what's your experience been like in that area?
Well, I've heard the advice that it's best to avoid giving unsolicited advice pretty much all the time, and if you do it, you have to be aware that you are damaged. You may very well be damaging the connection and the relationship. So you really have to weigh whether that intervention is worth it for you. But I generally agree with, or I totally agree with what you say. I think modeling is the most powerful thing. For me, an answer to this is actually the podcast. I think that
good point.
First of all, it's really nice that it's actually not a personal conversation. So it's that shame that people feel around body questions that I felt, still feel to some extent, that kind of helplessness, that is very much diminished when you're just listening to a conversation. So I think that's great. I think another thing that's great, and this is true for both of our podcasts, is that we cover a relatively wide range. So there's always the possibility of someone checks out your interview on getting things done with David Allen, and okay, they'll subscribe, and next they will get this, and they totally didn't they weren't aware, they weren't conscious of their health, but this will get them started. So that's the best that I could come up with. But I really hope people make this step, because I believe it will it will benefit them greatly. And I haven't done much, and I'm not I don't consider myself a physically capable person. I've gotten better at it, but I'm not there. But even the benefits of what I've done so far are really valuable to me. And in many things, I found I'm not looking for joy and constant satisfaction often. I would say that I really value even more when I can start to feel things, even if it would be called a negative emotion. I had this with when my kind of emotional range broadened as after or during therapy. And now I really enjoy the fact that I am more aware of the feedback mechanisms of my body. So today I've slept less than what I usually sleep in, and I can feel that tiredness, and it's not pleasant, but I'm happy that I'm at least aware of it. So other than the things that we've mentioned so far, I like when you talk, I like your perspective on getting old. And I have a question here about what are the people who are less conscious of their physical well-being missing, and what is a trade-off? And I think what trade-off are they not aware of? And you've mentioned a lot of that, but I really love your perspective on aging and the trade-off in that. So yeah, if you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So one of the things that has also been a driving motivator for me, a driving force in my escalating the priority of health, has been seeing the people around me age and it not going so well. Seeing people that are, in a lot of pain, losing mobility, needing a walker in their 70s kind of thing. Seeing people that are so physically, they're suffering so much that they don't even want to go on, that they've basically given up. And me, when I watch that, I'm like, life is such a precious thing, and we are so limited in the amount of time that we have that, I made a promise to myself, I'm not going out like that. So one, I'm going to work on my health so that I'm alive on this planet as long as possible to experience this great thing called life. And I'm also going to work on my health so that I can experience that it's when I'm not only extending my years, but I'm improving the quality of my life while I'm here. Cause it's like I see people that, are in their 70s that need walkers or in wheelchairs even. Then I see people, 95 that are, out juggling, riding unicycles, right? And it's like, what's the difference here? And, one of the things I realized is that, it was just never stopping. A lot of these people stopped taking care of themselves, stopped doing the things that they were doing when they were younger. And when you stop, those muscles atrophy, right? And that was one of the things that, really grabbed my attention, is just seeing the people around me and seeing, Alzheimer's and dementia and some of the people I care about developing that, and then, researching that and finding out how preventable that can be, based on choices you make, but you can't prevent it when it's already there. It needs to start much earlier in life. So that was really something that, grabbed my attention and said, this is really important. And as far as like trade-offs that people have, I think the trade-offs, people don't realize that the trade-off is not very much at all, if at all, any kind of trade-off. So let's like look at what some of these trade-offs would be, right? So in my mind, there's 4, maybe 5 pillars of health. and that's nutrition, exercise, sleep, stress management. And then I would kind of put in there, and I'm not sure what I would actually call it at this point. I'm toying with the name of posture, but posture doesn't really capture everything that I mean when I say posture. But it's basically, it's the issues that are revealed when I talk about the sitting solution. So I've done a podcast on the sitting solution. I'm an affiliate for that product because it's really been one of the life-changing books that I've read. The Sitting Solution. It's a book and like an exercise program. It's accompanied by a series of videos, and it counteracts the damage that we do to ourselves in being sedentary, primarily sitting down, right? And people lose movement, lose flexibility, lose strength, and lead to that scenario like I was talking about of, like needing a walker at 70. It's interesting. It's really linked to a lot of other diseases as well that you wouldn't necessarily think of, like cancer and heart disease and the like. The more you sit, the more likely you are to have these bad outcomes. But I would maybe that would be like the fifth pillar is posture. But so anyways, what are you trading off? So in nutrition, people think, well, I'm giving up these foods that I love. So, but when I sit here, when I look at my diet right now, I eat very healthy, and I think the foods I'm eating are delicious. I think there are plenty of healthy foods that are delicious as well. So I'm just eating a smaller subset of the delicious foods that are out there, right? So is that a huge trade-off to, go from being able to, choose from any food I want of all the delicious foods that are out there to just a smaller subset? It's not a huge trade-off. It's really not. And, one of the keys to the way I diet is minimizing sugar. Sugar is pretty much universally bad for you, right? But when you cut sugar out of your diet, is what you discover is that your palate becomes more sensitive. You can taste sweetness more in other things where, it's like now the things that I used to eat that were sugary, they're now almost too sweet for me. Where when I eat a piece of fruit, it tastes like just so sweet to me. And even things that aren't even really considered to be sweet, like, cottage cheese will sometimes taste sweet to me. And the like, because my palate is much more sensitive now. And so people don't realize that, okay, the foods aren't really going to be bland when you cut back on these like foods that are ultra flavorful or ultra sugary and salty and the like. Your taste buds will then compensate and things won't be bland and they will still taste good. So it's a small trade-off. I would say the biggest trade-off with food is more just one of convenience. Oftentimes the convenient foods are the ones that are less healthy choices. You're out and about and processed food is very convenient, and processed food, making a generality, so take it for what it's worth. But in general, processed food is less healthy than whole foods, and they're going to be, much more convenient to just grab something that's in a wrapper off the store shelf and eat that if you're on the go quickly, or, you're out somewhere and there's food available, but it's not a healthy choice. So you can either eat the food that's right in front of you that's not a healthy choice, and that's very convenient because it's already there. You're at a picnic at work or whatever, or you have to make some other arrangements to get healthier foods. So the convenience is probably the bigger trade-off. But for me, the health benefits are so much greater that it's worth it, right? Exercise is one. It's more of a time trade-off, I would say. If you're exercising, people think, well, that means I need to give up on some of the things I'm doing now. I won't be able to play as many video games. I won't be able to watch as much TV, that sort of thing. And if you really look at it, there are ways that you can get exercise that you're not actually exchanging time for it. So I will exercise while I'm watching TV. Like I always do my strength training while I'm watching TV. And a lot of the stretches and the like from the Sitting Solution, for example, I'll do while I'm watching TV. You can take care of any phone calls you need to make while you're out having a walk. So it's not, you were going to make those phone calls anyway, but instead of just sitting there, you're now out walking. There are different things like this you can do that make it so that you're not trading off time, but you're getting exercise in. You know, maybe you were going to be spending the afternoon with your kids, and normally you sit there and you play video games with them or board games or whatever, watch shows. Instead of doing that, you could go in the backyard and kick the soccer ball around, or, you know, go to the pool and do swim races. My daughter loves to race me in the pool. She actually loves to race me anywhere, even on ground or whatever. It's just on the land, I'm much faster than her, so I have to really handicap myself for it to be a fair race. Where in the pool, she's a competitive swimmer, and she's reached the point now where she can beat me in all the different strokes, where, you know, really handily at this point. So she loves to do that. But, you know, we'll get in the pool and race, and I don't care that I'm losing. I'm just having fun racing her, and, you know, and seeing the smile on her face when we do these, you know, 'cause she really enjoys the competition of it. You know, we'll do things like an underwater race. You know, how fun is that? Where we'll see who can go the farthest underwater before they need to come up for air, like swimming along the bottom of the pool. And, you know, that's all great exercise, and it's not really costing me any extra time because I was planning on spending a couple hours with my daughter that day anyway, that sort of thing. So I think the trade-off is not what, you know, people think it is. You know, 'cause people think of, okay, I've got to go to a cycling class, or go, you know, meet with my personal trainer and hit the gym, and there's all those things. And yeah, that takes a lot of time if you're driving out to a gym, finding a parking spot, walking in, changing into your gym clothes, hitting the weights there, whatever, and leaving. But that's just one way of exercising. There are other ways to do it, you know, and people are also like, I guess the trade-off is I'm going to be doing something I don't enjoy. Well, you know, if you don't enjoy lifting weights, then I would say don't do it. Find something you do enjoy. So Kevin Geary from the Rebooted Body has got this acronym. It's DWIDL. It stands for do what you love to do. And he said for exercise, you know, find something you love doing. If you enjoy tennis, go play tennis. You know, if you enjoy playing soccer with your kids, go out and play soccer with your kids, that sort of thing. Just find something that you enjoy doing and do that, you know. So the trade-off, it's very small there. Let's see, the exercise, nutrition. The next pillar would be sleep. Sleep is one that, you know, most people need 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. I think the studies have shown that. And if you're getting less than that, you know, if you're going on 4 or 5 hours a night, you know, you are going to have to trade off some of your time to get that more sleep. So, but the thing is, it's more than just time. That's not just saying, okay, on this one side of the ledger, I have, you know, let's say, let's go with, you know, you're currently sleeping 6 hours and you really need 8, right? So on one side of the ledger, I've got 16 waking hours. And on the other side, I've got 18 waking hours. Well, clearly the one with 18 waking hours, you know, looks like a better solution. There's more time to do things and the like than 16. But it's not fair to just look at that amount. You need to think, well, okay, if I've got 16 hours where I'm feeling rested and energized and really good, you know, feeling good and getting a lot of quality work done, is that better than, would I rather have 16 hours of that or 18 hours of being tired and feeling poor? And for me, it's, you know, it's a no-brainer that I would rather have the 16 hours of feeling good and energized. So, you know, that's one of the things is just, you know, and kind of stress management is the same way. It's very similar. It's like stress management. So how do you manage stress? I mean, there are many different ways to do it. I mean, exercise alone is a stress management tool. You know, if you're stressed out and you go do a workout, you will often really notice a drop in your stress levels while you're there. But you know, more of the traditional tools for stress management are things like meditation and journaling and gratitude practices and the like. And those things take time away from what you're currently doing. But, you know, stress is one of those things where it's impacts so many areas of your life. It's really, if you reduce your stress, you will improve in all areas of your life because it impacts everything. If you're less stressed out, you'll be able to work better at your job, you know, because you'll be more focused. You'll have more energy. You'll be in a better mood. You'll improve your relationships. You know, if, again, it's like if somebody so if somebody comes at you and with something that's kind of what most people would consider like a verbal attack. Like, let's say your partner comes home and they were expecting you to have cleaned the house, and they come home and the house is a mess, and they yell at you. So do you think you're going to be in a more resourceful place to deal with that and not damage respond back without damaging the relationship if you're stressed out, or if you're calm and cool and your stress is kept in check? In which area are you going to be more resourceful and better able to respond to them and without damaging the relationship and getting in an argument?
Yeah, you're gonna pay with those minutes that you saved from, I don't know, meditation. Yeah, you're gonna spend that on not sleeping at night. So there you go.
Right, exactly. So, and again, it kind of, like I was saying with sleep, it's like, would you rather have, because being stressed out is miserable, right? It's like, so let's say it takes you an hour a day to work on stress management. I think most people could probably make significant improvements in their life, lowering their stress levels in less than an hour a day. But for the sake of argument, let's just say it's 1 hour. So, you've got 16 hours a day stressed out, or you've got 15 hours a day because you spend an hour on stress management where you're not stressed out. Which would you prefer, knowing that reducing stress improves your health? It improves your mood. It's not fun to be stressed out, right? So I would much rather have 15 hours not stressed out than 16 hours stressed out, right? To me, it really isn't much of a trade-off at all, right? And as you were saying, the time thing, are you really trading an hour? So, okay, maybe, you spend that extra time that you would have done journaling in arguments, be it with your spouse or your coworkers or client or whatever. So there's that. And the other aspect is stress has a huge impact on your health. So if you're living a stressed out life, you might die 10 years earlier than had you kept that under control. And so then you have another 10 years. So it's like, okay, maybe I'm giving up a few minutes of time per day to work on stress management, but on the back end, I'm gaining years of my life. And if you work out the equation, it might just be a wash as far as time goes, or you might even come out ahead, like you actually gained more time because you took time out to deal with your stress. So, that's a really good point. And between that, like the time you gain back, and people just don't see that, and some of the, for lack of a better word, some of the hacks that are out there that you can use that enable you to not actually lose time while you're working on some of these things. So like an example, to go to the fifth pillar, the posture pillar, there are restorative exercises you can do while you're just watching TV. So that's not if you're going to spend that time watching TV, and if you're now just doing some stretches while you're doing it, that's not really taking up any more of your time. Or just, Danny Hammett is a really big proponent of this sort of thing, correcting your posture, movement. And I had her on, and she says, while she's brushing her teeth, she does calf stretches. So you could just be sitting there brushing your teeth for 2 minutes, or you could be brushing your teeth and doing calf stretches for 2 minutes. Either way, you only used up 2 minutes of your life, so it doesn't have to be this thing where it's like, oh, there's so much things to do in order to do it right that it's going to eat up all my time, and I'm not going to have the time to do the things I want to do or to get my work done. So screw it. I'm just not even going to do it. That's not true. There are a lot of ways you can get these things in where the trade-off is pretty much a no-brainer at that point, when you're like, okay, this isn't even going to cost me any extra time, and I'm going to feel better. I'm going to live longer. Okay. All right. Where do I sign?
Right. Yeah. And by the way, as far as, I think it was in Choice Conversations where, maybe it was even her, she talked about, or someone else talked about rearranging, their house so that common tasks require kind of more movement, or more more healthy movement. For instance, I don't know, you put your dishes in a very low shelf, so you kind of have to crouch to get them, and things like that. It was kind of funny to me when I was listening to that, because I realized that getting a physical job is also in some cases an excellent way of fully moving your body. I became kind of aware of that, and I was so my last job was in retail, filling shelves and kind of dealing with the warehouse. Everything she recommends in that podcast episode I was doing. I was handling irregularly shaped objects, everything imaginable. So maybe instead of a gym, get like a 4-hour part-time job in a that could be something you could do.
Right. Well, so just add to that one thing. While jobs where you move have at least in that area, a big benefit over jobs where you're sedentary. The one downside to watch out for with a job is there is a risk of repetitive, getting an injury from repetitive movement. Mm-hmm. So if you're in a job where you're like working on an assembly line or whatever, people will run into their body breaks down because they're doing the same movement over and over again. So is that better than just sitting there? Probably not, but just keep that in mind. I mean, yeah, there are plenty of jobs where you're not necessarily doing the movement the exact same way all the time, where that helps. But that's where like some people say, well, I've got a desk job, so I guess I need to switch to a standing desk. And while there are injuries, while there's damage you do to your body by sitting there all day, there's also damage you do if you're standing there all day, and people can get injuries from standing all day long. And I'm like, okay, well maybe I'll go with a walking desk. And then you can run into that thing where you injure yourself from the repetitive motion of doing that same motion, 8-9 hours a day, 5-6 days a week, right? So one of the keys, at least in the area of movement, is getting a big wide variety of things, not doing the same thing over and over again. It very much equates to nutrition in that, nutrition, apples might be great for you, but if all you ever eat is apples, you're going to die, you're going to get sick, because your body needs all kinds of different movements, not just that one, right? So, walking on a treadmill, there's really nothing that's a good healthy movement, but if that's all you're getting, you're going to have deficiencies in your movement diet. So just wanted to put that caveat in there.
Yeah, and also apples really limit your access to healthcare because they keep the doctor away. So you gotta watch out for it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I really like the idea of that rearranging your home. I think that's great. I always like when you can integrate stuff into your life where it's not an extra, where you don't have to spend extra willpower. That's really nice. I also wanted to say that I think stress is something, is another field where people are just not aware. Some people are, and it's fashionable to say that I'm so stressed, but I'm not sure that people really experience it. And I know this from personal experience that, so in my past, people often thought that I was the calmest person in the room. But at a certain point, I realized that I was just very good at internalizing it and kind of having little tics, like moving my legs or something like that, it would kind of come out there, but it was hidden in a way. But I think that's very interesting that if somebody focuses on how they're feeling, and it can be a mental thing, but what really helped me was just focusing on my body, in particular on my muscles. And I just noticed that they're tense all the time. If I'm just sitting and doing something, almost every little muscle in my body is tense. My legs are tense, my arms are tense, everything is tense. And that realization kind of helped me really experience it. And I suddenly became aware that I'm feeling terrible. This is really bad. And it just wasn't conscious. It just wasn't conscious before. And, I think that's something that people should look into and look into themselves and see how they feel, because it's easy to miss. It's normalized in a way. Nobody's going to tell you if you have, I don't know, restless leg syndrome or whatever, or if you fidget a lot. Not a lot of people are going to tell you, hey, what's your stress level? Did you think about that? Especially if they follow the advice of not giving unsolicited advice. But yeah, I think that's worth considering. And I really like how you stripped away the trade-offs there. I think with many fields of personal development, what looks like really intensive and complicated and expensive turns out not to be so. But I do think there's a big investment necessary, especially at the beginning. And I think that's multiplied for people who are not feeling comfortable in their body right now. And I think this is a very challenging field, and I don't really have any answers. And I'm really curious if you were giving advice to somebody who's really not used to physical movement and they're ashamed of it, and maybe their appearance is also like that. How would you help them ease into this? What would you tell them?
Oh, that's a great question. So first of all, if they're experiencing shame, it probably would be good for them to look internally and try to figure out what is the source of that shame and get the answers there first. And, they could do that while they're in concert with implementing other solutions, like irregular walking or whatever. But definitely the more you can work on getting to know yourself and gaining like mastery over your internal world, building harmony in your internal world, that's going to have just huge ripple effects through all areas of your life again. It's going to, put you in a more resourceful place to find solutions for your health and the like. So I'm a big fan of interfamily systems therapy. It's also called IFS. And it's a way to look at these parts inside of you that might be feeling some emotions that are working against you being able to reach the things you want to reach in life, reach the goals and the like. So maybe you have shame for one of them, or fear. Maybe you're scared of diving into improving your health, and you need to explore that and see, well, why is there this fear? What am I afraid is going to happen if I work on this? Is it like a fear of failure that I'll start and then not be able to stick to it, and then then I'll feel shame for that and that sort of thing. But looking into those areas and addressing those and helping to come at peace with those different parts of yourself, heal those parts and come at peace with them, and live in harmony with the different thoughts you have in your mind is going to be a huge thing as far as being able to implement any self-help advice that's out there, whether it's around diet or around relationships or around financial success and the like. If your mind is not on board, if there's a part of your mind, maybe it's not even at the conscious level, it might be more subconscious, but if it's not on board, then it's going to be steering you off course, right? I kind of think of it as your conscious mind is like the captain of the ship, but your subconscious mind is the crew. And if your subconscious mind is working against you, it doesn't matter like what orders the captain's giving, the ship's not going to arrive at the location he wants it to if the rest of the crew is not taking his orders and is going, in another direction, right? So I think that's the area I would look. If you know that there's these thoughts in your minds that are kind of working against you being able to meet these goals, you are going to need to look at that and address that internally. IFS is a great way of doing that. I know that Nathaniel Brandon is a psychologist. He's not an IFS therapist, but he's a psychologist. He has a lot of exercises. They're called sentence stem exercises that are really great in helping you explore these different parts of you and learn about yourself and heal those inner wounds, right? So those are the areas I would look to. And to be honest, that's psychological health is just as important to your health as anything else. Like I said, there's that the mind and body are really integrally linked, and any changes you can do there are going to have positive effects. If you can make positive changes there, it will definitely trickle into the other areas of your life.
Yeah, I recommend those as well. I've found a lot of value in both the works of Nathaniel Branden and in the IFS perspective. I've actually tried IFS therapy, and I found that I didn't enjoy the style in which it is conducted, but just the mental framework of the parts and how they interact, and me mediating for myself, kind of self-therapy style, my own parts in my own style. I found that really valuable. And what I would add to that from my own experience is that, number one, I think it's, as with many other things, it's easy to think that physical fitness and competence with your body and in the physical world is a trait and it's not a skill. But I more and more have come to believe that it is a skill, and it just as anything else. It's not, there's no, other than some disabilities, perhaps, there's no person who cannot, if they put the time in, cannot become as competent as most others. Maybe not win the Olympics, but to feel really comfortable in their bodies. I think that's one thing. And in conjunction with IFS, something that I realized as I looked into my own history was that it's worth looking into how your interactions with the physical world were treated when you were a child. And as I looked back into this, I noticed a pattern where I was often shamed for, say, dropping a cup or spilling my drink or dropping something or things like that, where it wasn't even probably developmentally appropriate, but of course the people around me had their own anxieties around that and their own concerns around that, and they couldn't communicate that in a way that would be beneficial. So for me, there was a lot of shaming around that, and what that led me to do, what led how I adapted to that was to gradually withdraw from the physical world in a way, kind of become a floating brain kind of thing, where the physical world was kind of merely a source of minor inconvenience, but otherwise I would not interface with it too much if it wasn't through a computer or something like that. And that was simply a very valid defense mechanism. That was a very functional strategy that protected me from further shaming and things like that. But now that I'm a grown-up, this strategy has become detrimental to my enjoyment of life, and I'm learning to re-interface with the world, and having physical jobs after having office jobs really helped with that. And I just want to say that it's possible, and I want to encourage people who find themselves in a similar situation to baby step their way forward with it. It's absolutely a realistic and worthy thing.
Well, thank you for sharing that story with me. That's very, very an enlightening story, I would say, to show the effects that it's had on you. And I really appreciate that vulnerability. And I'm sorry you had to go through that. That is a shame. One of the topics that comes up on Choice Conversations from time to time is parenting. And, I've said that people treat their children differently than they would treat anyone else in their life. And, it's like, okay, if your child knocks over a glass, and I don't mean like they intentionally like knocked it over. That's a different story if they intentionally, but it's just accidentally knocked over a glass. Okay, and then your wife, she accidentally knocks over a glass. How are you going to treat those differently? Most people would never like yell at their wife for knocking over a glass. They might even, just go help. They're like, oh, geez, let me help you clean that up, and, be very understanding and like, I'm sorry that got knocked over or whatever. It's spilling onto that carpet you loved. Oh, geez, let's get that cleaned up. Oh man. Or I know you just broke your favorite glass. Oh, that stinks, But if their child does it, and even if the child like is sitting there crying and upset about it, they'll be like, look what you did. You broke your favorite glass. Can you believe that? Or, and really like the shaming and the like activities that they would not do to their spouse, or maybe even a better way of thinking of this would be like a client. How would they treat a client if a client knocked over a glass? And this, a client isn't someone that's as nearly as important in your life as your own child, but yet they treat a client, this outsider, as much better than they would their own child, or maybe a guest in their home. How would they treat a guest in their home that knocked over a glass versus the child? And it's really sad to see that happen, and it is like, I think you'd said this, you'd worded it, I don't remember exactly how you worded it, but that, whenever a child does that, it's triggering to the parents, right? And it probably reminds them of when they were a child and how their parents responded to them. And there's a lot of emotions that fire off. And, that's, I feel for the parents that are kind of locked in that loop as well and haven't been able to realize that contradiction that, geez, when I have the neighbors over, I don't act this way towards them. Why am I doing it to my child? That they don't have that awareness of the cycle they're locked in, is very sad. And I have a lot of empathy for the parents as well as the child in that scenario, because neither of them are really coming from a good place, a place where their lives are going to be enriched. They're just taking away enrichment from their life with those interactions. So again, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I also have a lot of empathy for the parents. I didn't for a long time, but sure. I think that, yeah, it's frustrating. I mean, it's an extra chore. Usually the child cannot give that sense of visibility. They will not realize that it's an extra chore, that it's an inconvenience. And it can perhaps seem like that they're kind of oblivious to that. That's one thing. The other thing is probably, I would guess that many parents are not aware of really what stages of physical development children have, and precisely where that ends, where that begins, and what they're capable of. So it can seem like a perhaps personal attack or something that could have been easily avoided. So I also empathize with that, and but I think, yeah, if they think about it, they will find that there are more enriching ways to go forward. So yeah, so getting back to the subject of physical health and your habits around it. So you mentioned these 5 pillars. What would you recommend as the low-hanging fruits, like the easiest steps that can get you started, perhaps in each pillar?
Sure. So, I mean, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit out there in each one of these. So one that comes to mind right away for nutrition is to just stop drinking calories. If you're somebody who drinks a lot of soda, for example, just switching from soda to water can have a huge impact. I mean, I've seen people drop 30 pounds just switching from soda to water. And this includes, I would include in there things like sugar substitutes. So, you might be drinking a Coke Zero and think, well, okay, I'm not drinking calories, but your body still has a negative reaction to those sugar substitutes. So I would stop drinking calories and stop drinking anything with sugar, like a sugar substitute in it as well. So you'll see big benefits. And, water is very, very good for you. I guess if you're addicted to caffeine, then I would say drink tea or coffee. It's probably not going to be low-hanging fruit for you to break that addiction to caffeine. That can be a little more challenging. It's definitely something that can be done, but it's going to be a little more, I wouldn't call it low-hanging fruits, but you can just switch to tea unsweetened or coffee unsweetened. And if you want cream in your tea or your coffee, that's fine. That's just heavy cream is pretty much just all fat, and that's very healthy for you. But yeah, that's one you can do right away that you'll see really big improvements with that. Exercise, I would say try to, make a goal of moving, getting some sort of exercise, some sort of movement for an hour a day. That can be just going for a walk, or it can be going out and playing with your kids or whatever it is. But if you're not getting an hour in a day and you start doing that, you'll notice a big difference. And some people, for them, walking for an hour, they might not be physically able to do it. So I would say start with whatever you can. If you can only walk 10 minutes, walk 10 minutes, and then build up to the point where you can do, you can get an hour walk in or whatever that activity is. Maybe you go on 3 20-minute walks a day initially, or even, long term. If that's all you have time for is 3 20-minute walks a day, just, hey, I need to make this call. Now would be a good time to get a walk in. So you walk while you're doing your call, and then, you go back to the office or whatever for the rest of your day. But, just an hour of movement is a huge difference, really, if you're not getting that. So sleep, an easy low-hanging fruit for that would be to meditate when you lie down to sleep. It will help you to fall asleep quickly. I have a sleep meditation on Patreon. It's a bonus content on Patreon that
highly recommend it.
Oh, well, thank you.
I'm using it.
Yeah,
I'm using it.
Yeah, and especially if you have insomnia, this is a real game changer. I used to lie in bed for, typically an hour or two each night. And some nights, 4 or 5 hours before I would fall asleep. And, now it's 5 or 10 minutes is typically all it takes, quite often less than that even. And, it's not costing you any time to do that. Again, that's a real easy trade-off there, because what are you giving up? Instead of lying in bed and thinking about what you're going to do the next day or what happened during that day or whatever, you're meditating, and, you'll get more sleep. You'll have a higher quality sleep, and it doesn't cost you any time. So that's a really great one. And I've had several friends that have done that sleep. I've taught that sleep meditation to, audience members and the like, and they've reported back to me a lot of success that they've had. They used to have insomnia, and the meditation just totally knocks them out. It really works great. It really cured them of the insomnia. So that's a good one. And you can find me on Patreon. It's patreon.com/choiceconversation. So that's there if you're interested in that one. Let's see, the posture. A real low-hanging fruit for that is to start using pillows when you sit for lumbar support. They make it much easier for you to have correct posture. And I don't know, I feel so much better. Like right now, as I'm recording this, I'm sitting and I've got a pillow for lumbar support, and I just love it. And I keep a pillow in my car for lumbar support. And I was driving my wife's car the other day, and I didn't have a pillow in there, and I was like, oh my God, this is so much less comfortable. And it's funny because, I have an older car and she's got a newer car, and before I started using pillows for lumbar support or really paying much attention to posture before I, dove into the sitting solution, I thought her car had comfier chairs than mine. You know, it's newer and has these nice bucket seats to it and the like. And now, you know, I was like, man, this is not comfortable at all. I, you know, really would greatly prefer to have that lumbar pillow right now. So, you know, that's a real easy one. Or, you know, another thing that you can do is just, instead of sitting in a chair when you're watching TV, sit on the floor. That's better for your body. Mainly, the big difference there is it counteracts, you're sitting in a position that's different than when you sit in a chair, you sit differently than when you sit on the floor. So it's a way to, like, you're not spending all your time that one same position again. And people also tend to not stay in the same position when they're on the floor for very long. You'll do 2 to 5 minutes in one position and then switch 2 to 5 minutes to another. And there's a whole huge variety of positions you can get in when you're on the floor. So that's a real easy one that can help with your posture and, you know, undoing some of the damage that sitting has done. Stress management. So low-hanging fruit for stress management. Well, there are things like those 5-minute journals you can do. That is a good one. Just actually, and a real easy one is, and this is something you've probably heard before, is to just take like 5 or 10 breaths. So say you notice yourself in a point where your emotions are elevated or you're feeling stressed. You know, maybe you're working on something and you just feel the stress eating at you. You're like, oh, I need a break. You're going to sit back, close your eyes, and count your breaths. You know, put your focus on your breath and just sit there and count to 10 breaths while all you're doing is just, you know, clearing your mind and have your focus on your breath. It takes, you know, a few seconds, maybe a minute, and you'd be amazed how your emotion levels will drop, how you'll feel that stress start to dissipate. And it's such an easy tool you can do anywhere. You know, that's a really good one. And let me think. So we've done nutrition, exercise, posture, sleep, stress management. Yep, we got them all.
Nice. Yeah, I would add 2 things to that came to mind as you were speaking. One is that I think one of the, at least for me personally, one of the reasons why I had a hard time sleeping and still do sometimes is that that's a really great time to think for me. And the reason that it's such a great time to think is that I don't always I don't always allocate the time during the day. And it's very important. So if you keep yourself distracted, working, whatever, you have something going on all the time, you don't have a habit, or even you just don't simply disconnect yourself and think a little bit and sit in your head during the day, then your brain's producing all sorts of great ideas, and when you're in bed is the only time when those can get out. So I think that would be a good thing to try, because I tried your meditation, but I was hesitant because I saw that it worked. I was hesitant some nights because I was like, man, I could, if I went for half an hour, I might get a really great idea. And then I realized that this is not a good time for that. And with stress management, I'm pretty sure you include it as well, but I think having some kind of productivity system, even if a very basic one, key to that. Absolutely. My last question is, I'm really into frugality and minimalism, preferably combined. So if you have a 0 budget and you do not really wish to, or let's say a very limited budget, and you do not really wish to increase the number of items that you own to exercise, what would you do? Some of the things that you said would fit there. So I think you said walking, you mentioned like sprinting, you mentioned playing around outside. We talked about physical labor with care. What else would you do, or do you do?
Sure. Yeah, no, so one thing that I don't have is a gym membership. So strength training is something that's important. It's not nearly as important as just getting out and moving. So, you know, the best exercise is the one you'll actually do. So if you hate strength training, and if that's what you're listing as your exercise, but you don't do it because you hate it, then it's a terrible exercise. Where you find something that you love to do, right, that you're actually going to do. But if you're looking to get strength training in, because it is something it's relatively important, there's no reason really to have a gym membership. You can do body weight exercises and work out your whole body. I quit my gym membership years ago, so that saves me a lot of money. And, I'll do push-ups. There's a variety of push-ups you can do for your chest. You can, go narrow grip, wide grip, or place your hands wide or tight. You can elevate your feet. You can elevate your hands. So that would be like, you can do push-ups with your feet, up on a set of stairs on, the first, second, third set of stairs, changing that. You can put your hands on the first, second, or third stairs and do push-ups that way to change the elevation. Do one-arm push-ups if you want higher weight and lower repetitions, that sort of thing. Pull-ups, you can just go grab I actually have a pull-up bar that was not very expensive. I think it's called the Iron Gym, but it's maybe $20, maybe even less than that you just stick in a doorway. But you don't need that either. You can just go out and find a tree branch. Before I got the Iron Gym pull-up bar, I would go out in my yard and just grab a tree branch. And again, you can do narrow grip, wide grip. You can grab the tree from behind. So like if you're looking at the tree branch and your fingers are around it, you're seeing the tips of your fingers, if that makes sense. And do pull-ups that way, it's technically called a chin-up when you grip the bar that way. Or a pull-up is when you reverse your hands and place them, so when you place them on the tree branch and grab it, you're now viewing the backs of your hands. So that's changing your hand placement there. And you could do stuff like shifting your body weight, like, okay, you grab the tree branch, but instead of pulling yourself up with your body right in the middle, so your head's right between your hands, try to get it so your head comes up and it's like your chin is like really close to your right hand. Do a few, repetitions that way, and then go where your chin is close to your left hand, where your body's shifted around. It just kind of hits the muscles in different ways, which it's good to get a variety of that in there. And, for like shoulders, what I do is I do handstand push-ups. So I put my feet up on the wall so I don't have to worry about balance. And, my weight is all on my hands, and then it's like doing almost like a military press, but with body weight. So you bring your head down until it touches the floor, as maybe an inch away, and then lift back up. That's a great one for shoulders. There's for legs, you can do squats. You don't have to actually have any weight, or you can like just pick up something heavy and hold it to your chest while you're doing squats. You can also do, for that, squats are a good whole leg workout, but they do hit your quads more than they hit your hamstrings. But one exercise you can do to hit your hamstrings, and I don't even know what you would call this, maybe a bridge, but it's basically you lie with your back on the ground and your feet are on the ground, your knees are bent and your feet are on the ground, and then you lift your pelvis up in the air and then come back down. And you can do repetitions of that, and you can do things like elevating your legs again and do those to hit the muscles differently. And cause that's the one complaint people have about working out with body weight is they're like, yeah, you can do a body weight workout, but you can't get much variance to it, and it's like, well, I think you can get enough if you think about it, even stuff like squats, I'll do like one-legged squats, for a higher weight, lower reps, and you can change the speed at which you do it, like, doing any of these exercises very slow on the way down, like count to 5 on the way down and count to 5 on the way up, works the muscles really differently than if you just kind of go at like a regular cadence, one breath down, one breath up sort of thing, or breathing out as you're pushing the weight away from you, and then breathing in as you bring it back, that sort of thing. And that is different than going as fast as you possibly can. To say, okay, how fast can I possibly do these push-ups? Or how fast can I possibly do these squats? So it's a way to really vary it up. And yeah, if you got one great way for exercise, if you have a community pool, is to go actually go swimming in it. So, of course, if you don't have a community pool, that's going to cost you a lot of money to go get a membership, so that wouldn't qualify then. But the neighborhood we used to live at, we had a community pool that was just part of our homeowners association fees. We got access to the pool, and I can tell you, most people in the neighborhood didn't even use it. And the ones that did use it were there just primarily would just go in the pool and relax, or they would sit on the edge while their kids played in the pool and watch them. You could get in the pool and swim, get in and play with find games to play with your kids. My daughter, like I said, she loved to race me in the pool, or the underwater races were really fun to do and the like. And, you could do like underwater boxing and stuff like that. Is just, there's a variety of different exercises you can do if you have access to a pool. So, and again, you had already mentioned walking and running, but, some people are like, well, I don't run because I can't really afford running shoes. Well, you don't actually need running shoes or even shoes in general. It's actually better for you to go barefoot. So it's the ultimate cheap exercise is just going barefoot and going out for a run. So, as long as you're in a place where you don't have to worry about broken glass, it's very frugal, and it also is actually really healthy for you. It's healthy for your feet and your body to take the shoes off. But that is something I will say that you do need to ease into if you've been wearing shoes all your life and you never thought of going out barefoot or in minimalist shoes or anything like that. Some people will get injuries when they start off because they jump into it too aggressively. So, you might want to if that's something that you're interested in doing, I would research how you should approach it. How should you get started? 'Cause there are things out there like, for example, Vibram has the 5-fingered shoes. Those are the shoes where you can see they look like, it's like a glove for your feet. You can see your toes, right? And if you just research, how do I get started with Vibram 5-finger shoes? There's, the company has guidelines out there for how to get started so that you break your feet in slowly and, not injure yourself. So yeah, those are the ways I would say is, to get out and play and have fun. Walk and run, use body weight for strength training. You can really honestly, like, stuff that's in your neighborhood or that's just out and about can be an obstacle course for you. Climb on top of stuff, climb trees. Climbing trees is great exercise for your body and for your brain. They did a study that showed how climbing a tree, will actually improve your IQ temporarily. It's a pretty interesting thing that they showed, even more so than doing yoga. It wasn't just movement in general, but the climbing a tree, there was something about engaging your brain in that way of coordinating the movement and the physical exertion and having to think, okay, what branch do I need to grab now and the like, that was really great for your brain.
For maximum brain power, I recommend climbing a tree next to a Mozart concert.
Yeah, that's good. Nice. Yeah, but in the one My Life series podcast that I did on walking, I talk about how I will turn my walks into kind of going over an obstacle course, where I'll jump on top of things and climb up things. And if I see a tree branch, I might do some pull-ups or swing from it. Swinging is a really great exercise. It's something people don't normally do as adults. So there's all these different ways that you can not spend money and exercise.